everybody, and welcome back to the D&D Delver with your young adult librarian Lexi, me, yay! So today we're gonna kind of go over a couple of things regarding what you can do while you're in combat. So when you're first starting off, combat can feel really kind of limited as to what you can do. However, that's not the case. I know to a degree, of course, because you are in combat and like you're having to make split second decisions, it may feel very limited, and that's because it kind of is. But at the same time, you don't always have to do the attack action on your turn. I know for a lot of people that's immediately what they come to think of, but there may be situations where you are required to do something more than just to attack. One of my favorite one shots that I've ever played in uh, was one in which you were fighting while you had to figure out riddles before time ran out. And it was really kind of cool. So you really had to kind of work with your team to try and figure out who was doing what and when. So I really enjoyed. That was probably one of my most favorite ones. But I also really like riddles. So we're gonna kind of go over all the different attacks, and this is really good for people who have been playing a while and might have forgotten everything that you can do while you're in combat, as well as for beginners. So there's three main things that you can really do while you're in combat. You can attack, you can take a reaction, and you can take movement. And you can take a bonus action if you have it. So there's four things. Those are the four main things that everybody thinks of while they are fighting. And of course, there's always those things like if you're a fighter or barbarian and you have an extra attack, you have that too. But something especially for like a lot of spellcasters, you're pretty much limited. Like you can cast one spell and that's about it for your turn. But another action that you can take, especially if you're trying to get away really quickly, is you can take the dash action, which means you move up to twice your movement speed. And of course, there's always other going to be varying factors as well, like depending upon your race and class and all that. But I'm going over the standard set of kind of lists and actions that you can take. You can take the disengage action. So when you take this action, that's all you can do. You can move out of range, and you can take your full movement to get away. It doesn't provoke an opportunity attack, but you can't dash, you can't attack, and you can't do anything else on your turn other than disengage, unless you have like a bonus action or something like that. You can also you can choose the dodge action. So I'm actually going to read this one verbatim, just so it's kind of clear on this. When you take the dodge action, you focus entirely on avoiding attacks until the start of your next turn. Any attack rolls made against you have disadvantage if you can see the attacker. You make a dexterity saving throw with advantage. You lose this benefit if you're incapacitated or if your speed drops to 0. So basically, you have to say, I am taking the dodge action, and it takes up that turn that you have up until the start of your next turn, of course. But basically, anything in between now and then, it's kind of beneficial because it's something that doesn't really happen. It's not like a reaction where you're taking half. Like if you were to cast a spell as a reaction, such as absorb elements, it's not like that. It's taking, and it's not a reaction either. So you have to specifically say, which is kind of weird to me because you think the dodge action should really be used as a reaction to avoid damage. Like, that's something that doesn't really make sense to me, but this is how as rules written. So basically, you take that action on your turn. That's it. You can take your bonus action and your action and all that other stuff, but your dodge action is your turn. You can also take the help action during your turn of combat. It's where you lend your aid to another creature in the completion of a task. So this can be like help with tying a rope, help with a riddle, help with the completion of a riddle. Sorry. Um, it can also be something where like you're doing a medicine check to try and stabilize somebody. And then alternatively, you can aid a friendly creature in attacking a creature within 5 feet of you. So basically, what this means is you can try and basically give your ally advantage on their next attack roll by distracting the target or basically some type of way of distracting them or keeping their focus off of your ally so they can get advantage on their roll. But again, when you take that, you're not attacking. You're just saying, I'm doing this to distract them so somebody else can get a hit. And what that does is it actually gives them advantage with their next hit. So you can distract an ally, or sorry, not distract an ally. You don't want to do that. You can distract the person that you're fighting with if you know your ally on the other side of him has something like really bad to hit him with that can really take out a lot of damage and HP. And it also helps in the fact that it gives your ally advantage on the roll, which is to me like a really huge type of boost in all honesty. But you can also take the hide action. In this, you make a dexterity stealth check in an attempt to hide under the following rules for hide, yada yada yada. Basically, to make this short and sweet, you have to have some place you can hide, obviously, and basically it's typically going to be a stealth versus insight or passive perception check. Typically passive perception if you guys are in real combat. And so that's the hide action. There's really not a whole lot to it. And of course, when you're hiding, you can't, if you use your bonus action to attack or something like that, of course, that gives away your position and things like that. It kind of works like invisibility. They need to do some type of check or compete, or you do, to compete with their passive perception type of situation. You can also ready an action, so this means you can ready your attack, you can ready a trap trigger or something like that if um, if the opponent disappears. This really helps when you're working with creatures that can turn invisible or burrow underground. A lot of people will take basically their action to ready a basically rather ready another action type of thing. Um, the thing is when this trigger occurs, it takes up your reaction for that round. So let's say you hold your action and you ready it for whenever this big baddie pops up. Big baddie pops up on his turn, you use your reaction, but then big baddie decides to attack you in that same round. Basically, that means you can't use your reaction to cast a spell. You can't use it to defend yourself. So it's really kind of a pros and cons here. And I think a lot of people forget that, like, when you ready that action, like, you can't take a reaction to, like, parry, or you can't take a reaction to give you any other type of boost. Like, that block is now gone for that turn base. But yeah, so when you use your action to ready, you then, if the trigger occurs, it eats up your reaction for that round. And there's a couple other things on here too, where they kind of talk about, and I think a lot of people forget these too, is like, we'll get to it later, but there's certain things that will eat up your reaction, so then when you later try to use that reaction, you can't. Um, and it's really kind of a pros and cons, and you kind of have to weigh who you're going up against when you do this, because it can make all the difference in the world. So the next one we're going to talk about is you can use the search action. Now, this comes into effect when you're doing something where you're juggling more than just a fight. So, like I said, when I was running something where it was like we were fighting and having to solve a riddle, part of solving that riddle was finding an object to solve that riddle with. So on your turn, you can take an action to search. When you search, basically your DM tells you, hey, make this check for whatever you're searching for, and you'll either find it or you don't. This weather outside's got me so sleepy right now. But you either find it or you don't. You still have to make a check to find the item. Just because you're using your action to search doesn't mean you're automatically going to find it. You can also, here's another one, and also one where a lot of people either overwrite as a DM or decide to ignore as a DM. So, using an object. So this means, here we go, I'll read this verbatim, just so everyone knows. You normally interact with an object while doing something else, such as when you draw a sword as part of an attack, when an object requires your action for its use, you take the use an object action. This action is also useful when you want to interact with more than one object on your turn. So basically, what this is saying is if you use a health potion, that eats up your action. Now, something that my DM does is he says using a potion actually counts as a bonus action, not an action, which is kind of nice on some leeway parts. But I don't know, this also qualifies for some other things, like there's other items such as like the gem of brightness and things like that that require you to use your action in order to use it. And so it just kind of depends. It depends upon your DM. This is one of those rules a lot of people tend to mess with quite a bit, just because, I mean, it can really kind of bog down combat, and like maybe in the early rounds, like early levels where you're level 1 and taking a health potion doesn't really, like, taking a health potion really helps you, but let's face it, when you get into higher levels and you're taking common health potions, it really doesn't do much for you, especially if you don't roll well. Alright, so next thing we're going to go into is a little bit of other different things for attack actions and things like that. So main thing is, if you can't see your target and you're taking a blind shot, you're going to make it at disadvantage. Same thing goes for if you're using a ranged weapon within 5 feet of a creature. So if you're trying to use your longbow and the person's right there, it's not going to work. You're going to make the attack with disadvantage, I believe. Yeah, you'll have disadvantage on the attack roll if they're within 5 feet. And then, of course, here's the one I was talking about earlier. Opportunity attacks. So when you use an opportunity attack when a creature is leaving your 5-foot radius, you use your reaction in order to make an attack at them. When you make this attack, it works just as what I was saying before, where you make that attack, and if they decide to attack you later in that same round, you no longer have a reaction to defend yourself with. So pros and cons. But usually if they're leaving your radius, it means they're fleeing. So at that point, it doesn't really matter, in my opinion. So here's another thing that I like to address as well. You can grapple a creature. You do not have to have a special feat. You do not have to be a fighter. You do not have to be a barbarian. You can decide to try and grapple a creature. Um, Even if you're a spellcaster, it may not be the wisest choice, but you can do it. This is an action you can do. Um, so when you want to grab a creature or wrestle with it, you can use the attack action to make a special melee attack a grapple. If you're able to make multiple attacks with the action, this action replaces one of them. I'm not going to get into that because that gets into like the fighter class and the barbarians and the beefy classes. So the target of your grapple must be no more than one size larger than you and must be within your reach. So basically, this means you can't try, if you're a human fighter, you cannot try and grapple a giant. Not going to happen. Or a gargantuan creature, sorry. I keep forgetting that, like, giants, large, huge, and gargantuan, like, they're all different. Don't even get me started on that. That's a whole nother session. uh, but yeah, so basically sizes is a whole nother thing. Basically, don't go above your weight class, essentially. But basically, you two roll contesting checks, and whoever wins determines whether or not the person's grappled. Excuse me. Of course, you can try and you can also try and shove a creature. This is one of my favorites. I did it once before in combat. I wish there were more opportunities, but it really comes like these are actions like you may not always think that you have, but like there's certain scenarios where you're fighting on an airship and you're fighting this person and you're like, man, I wish I could just shove them. Like a lot of DMs don't realize, yes, this is an actual thing that you can try and do. Um, but basically, it knocks them prone or pushes them 5 feet away from you. So if you're fighting on an airship and you have them on a ledge, it'd be really easier to just go push. um, but you make a special melee attack to shove a creature or push it away from you. You choose. Uh, you basically make a regular attack roll in order to see if it works. You also have to make a strength check. So 1, you need to roll to see if you hit. 2, you need to roll to see if you have the strength enough to actually push them. And it's going to be contested by their athletics or acrobatics check. Alright. Second to last thing we're going to go over is cover. So basically, as an action, you can attempt to find and hide behind cover. So basically, and I like to go over this because a lot of people kind of forget about cover since it's one of those, and it's really funny because it's one of those things that grants you a lot of AC. But if you have half cover, it gives you a +2 to your bonus. Um, Not only to a +2 bonus to your AC, but also a +2 bonus to dexterity saving throws. If you have 3/4 cover, it gives you a +5 bonus to AC and dexterity saving throws. And if you have total cover, and the target cannot be directly attacked by a spell or through some other type of effect that needs to be seen. So I mean, I think that's one of the things that always gets overlooked because a lot of people are focused on, okay, how can I get my AC higher? How can I get it higher? And they're always focused on the items. And then when they get into combat, they're so focused on the combat itself. They're not like, oh, I can actually hide behind this thing. And I think a lot of DMs too forget, like, oh, if they're hiding behind something or like if they're taking cover behind something, it gives them bonuses to their AC. And I think that also that's on point with the players as well, to be knowledgeable of the fact that Yes, I am getting bonuses to these things when I do this. So, the more you know. Damage rolls, critical hits. So, in all honesty, I'm just gonna say this about critical hits. It's however your DM wants to do it. I don't care who you are. Go with what your DM tells you. This goes for a lot of the rulings in here, but for the most part, I can't really. So, this is what it says for critical hits. When you score a critical hit, you get to roll an extra die for the attack's damage against the target. Roll all of the attack's damage die twice and add them together. Then add any relevant modifiers as normal. Speed up play, you can roll all the damage die at once. Basically, okay, here they have an example. For example, if you score a critical hit with a dagger, roll 2d4 for damage, rather than the normal 1d4, and then add any relevant ability modifiers. If the attack involves other damage dice from your rogue sneak attack feature, you roll those dice twice as well. So basically, you roll double damage. Now, how I do it with my players and how I've done it with my players is I say roll for damage, and then whatever you get, it's max damage plus whatever you roll. My thing is critical hits are very rare, and it's supposed to be like a awesome thing when you get it. So the damage output should kind of match that. Something that my DM does is he has these actual cards called critical hit cards. They're amazing and I love them. But basically, if you get a critical hit, you get to draw one of those cards, and then it has four effects on it. So if you're doing magic, melee, piercing, which is typically ranged, or bludgeoning. So like they have the three different physical types and then they have a magic type. And depending upon what you were doing, you take that type and it's either like quadruple the damage or something insane or the target's blinded for one round. It's pretty cool, but those are things you have to spend money for, unfortunately. Or you could make your own. That's always the thing. But yeah, that's critical hits. Every game I've played in, they've always played it differently for critical hits. So I haven't really seen anybody who plays the critical hits by the book, mainly because it's not. In all honesty, it's not that great because if you roll badly, it's less impressive. So and then that's about it. Again, using a health potion or anything like that is an action. And then I guess the last thing we'll go over is your death saving throws because those are technically your action. Um, so there is such thing as instant death. If you take massive damage, it can kill you instantly. If you take damage that reduces you to 0 hit points, and the damage remaining, you die if the remaining equals or exceeds your hit point maximum. So basically, if you're at 5 hit points and um, you're at 5 hit points, the big baddie hits you for 70 hit points, and your hit point maximum is 65. That would be an instant death. But if you're reduced to 0, you fall unconscious and you start to make death saving throws. Now, if you get hit or take damage during these death saving throws, if you get hit and you take damage, you take 2 failed death saving throws. If you get 3, you're dead. So basically, you don't want to get hit. I was actually playing in a campaign where we were going up a creature, and again, it was one of those riddle things, and my character, teleported onto the back of this creature, took the object they needed from the back of its head, and threw it to somebody else. But during that time, the creature had its turn, turned around, hit my character. She went down, and then the creature still had 2 more attacks, which basically instant killed me. all right. Like, no death saving throws, nothing. It was really sad day. I liked that character a lot. um, so that's death saving throws, and that's the majority of actions that you can do while in combat. Yay! Hopefully that was informational enough for some of you guys. I know, especially for beginning players, it can seem overwhelming, especially when or overwhelming or boring, depending upon who you are, because I mean, with everything that you can do, it can feel overwhelming, but at the same time, it's really, really easy to forget everything that you can do when you're in combat. So that's it. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and I will see you all next week.